While Lilac is the most played character in the game, she tends to not be understood as much as the other three characters, with a lot of casuals spreading misinformation about her. I believe this is because Lilac relies a lot on tech that the game never explains to the player, compared to the other characters which how to play them effectively is more obvious. This guide is to help you understand how to play Lilac effectively by going over how to use all of her moves, all the major tech that exists for Lilac, and how to effectively fight bosses as her. The most important thing when learning any speedrun is figuring out what moves are important for going fast and why. In this first section, I'll be going over every move that Lilac uses in order to go fast. Do note that not every move is useful for going fast. Those moves will not be mentioned at all. Dragon Boost is the quintessential go fast move, as it allows Lilac to get to near top speeds instantly. It's also Lilac's only real way of gaining speed, and as such is used a lot throughout the run, oftentimes being the first thing done in a level. The only drawback of Dragon Boost is that it takes a few seconds to charge after using, meaning you need to be incredibly mindful of when you use Dragon Boosts. Dragon Boost has a few other special properties besides gaining speed. If used on the ground, Dragon Boost will carry your speed into the boost. Because of this fact, runners will often do diagonal Dragon Boosts as they not only carry your horizontal momentum, but also give a lot of vertical height. Dragon Boosts also have unlimited coyote time during the startup, allowing you to run off platforms and still keep momentum if needed. Do note that aerial Dragon Boosts destroy all momentum they have going into them. They are still useful, mainly for initially gaining speed and for staying in the air though. I would also like to mention Boost Breaker here as well. While it isn't really useful in going fast as it cuts all momentum after using it, it can be useful for backups if you need to get somewhere high or need to cancel a Dragon Boost to prevent bonking. Dive Kick is arguably Lilac's best movement option in the game. However, since I've used dive kicking as more of a tech, I'll go into further explanations to why dive kicking is so good at the beginning of that section. Just keep this move in the back of your mind for now. Rising Slash, more commonly known as Uppercut, which is how I'll be referring to it for the rest of this video, is a very underrated move in Lilac's kit. Since it can now be used in the air, it essentially acts like a double jump for Lilac, allowing her to get to higher spaces much quicker than she otherwise would. Using it raw tends to eliminate all the speed you have though there is a way to circumvent this. I will be going over that in the tech section. Blink dashes are kind of the unsung hero of Lilac movement. On the surface, they are nothing more than an optimization tool, as it just increases Lilac's speed by 24 for a brief moment. Outside of that, however, they also halt Lilac's vertical momentum when used in the air. This makes what otherwise would just be an optimization tool an incredibly powerful movement option, allowing Lilac to fly through the air unlike any other character in the game. In fact, this one property alone makes almost every skip Lilac can do even possible in the first place. There is also a secret use of blink dashes, which I'll discuss in the tech section. Cyclone is Lilac's de facto double jump, being able to be performed by pressing jump mid-air. Despite this, it is basically never used for this purpose, as Uppercut does the whole double jump thing a lot better. Instead, Cyclone is more often used in its grounded form, done by holding down an attack while running. When jumping off of a slope, this form of Cyclone is useful as it gains a lot of height incredibly quickly. There is still a reason to use Cyclone in the air, but like a lot of things, that will be talked about in the tech section. As mentioned in the intro, one of the biggest reasons why Lilac is hard to understand from a casual perspective is how much he relies on tech compared to the other characters. This section will explain every single tech known for Lilac, which is useful in the speedrun. Dive kicks are the bread and butter of Lilac's movement, even more so than Dragon Boost. In fact, I would argue outside of bosses, knowing when and how to dive kick is more important for going fast than Dragon Boosting. So why are dive kicks so important? Well, it's because when Lilac is in the dive kick animation, the game doesn't apply any air drag to her. Now, you might be wondering what air drag is. Well, to put it in the simple terms, air drag is a force applied to the player to slow them down anytime they move upwards. The easiest way to show this is going into a hub stage, dragon boosting, then jumping. You'll notice that your speed goes down dramatically when you land. This is because of air drag. If I do the same thing but dive kick immediately after jumping, you lose no speed whenever you land. And since jumping is a very important part of a platformer, it makes sense that the most important tech allows you to jump without losing speed. In terms of inputs, there isn't anything too insane to go over, as it's just performing the dive kick input every time after you jump. You can make this easier by just holding down whenever you don't need to hold up or be neutral, as there's no downside to doing this unlike with Carol. The biggest tip I can give for beginners is you want to get in the habit of doing a dive kick basically every time you jump. There are times when it's optimal to not dive kick after a jump, but those are few and far between and can just be memorized with enough time put into the game. As I mentioned in the first section of this video, uppercut is essentially Lilac's double jump, as it gives nearly as much height as a regular jump and it can be used in the air. However, its one major downside is just how hard it is affected by air drag, making you lose nearly all of your speed anytime you want to use it as a double jump. Uppercut dive kick allows Lilac to perform an aerial uppercut with essentially no speed loss. The inputs for this tech are tricky at first, but become consistent with practice. You need to press up and attack for the uppercut to come out, then as quickly as possible go from up to down and then press attack again. The main issue is with the up-down motion required for the technique to work. Like I said, it is tricky, but with enough practice you should be capable of getting it most of the time. While uppercut dive kicks aren't absolutely required to get good times, I would still highly recommend learning this tech as it opens up a lot more routes and backups if you can properly use it. Gliding is a technique that abuses the way Cyclone behaves when you're holding either up or down. When using Cyclone, holding down makes Lilac drop like normal, if not faster, and when holding up, the slow fall that Cyclone usually has gets amplified. Gliding is done by holding down only at the beginning of the Cyclone, then quickly going to hold up for the rest of it. This allows Lilac to keep her vertical position over long stretches without being affected by air drag. Do note that gliding is slowly becoming more obsolete, as doing uppercut dive kick and blink dash spamming is much more effective for preserving height in most cases. At a beginner level though, I would still recommend learning this tech as it's still used in a handful of cases and you might find it easier than doing an uppercut dive kick. Uppercut Dragon Boost is a technique that allows you to gain height during the charging state of Dragon Boost. This is mainly used for optimization purposes as it's typically faster to do this over performing an uppercut into a Dragon Boost. Uppercut Dragon Boost also gives slightly more height than doing an uppercut in the Dragon Boost, making it required for certain skips. To perform this technique, you need to perform an uppercut, then slightly later press Dragon Boost. The window is very tight, 2 frames to be exact, and it's very hard to tell whether you performed it too early or too late. Do not let this technique prevent you from doing runs of the game. It is very much not required unless you are going for top level times. If you still wish to learn this, the best way to learn it is to just force yourself to use it even if you suck at it. The best level for this in my opinion is Magma Starscape, as there are several opportunities to use this tech to save time. Short hop is a technique where you can get off the ground very slightly, even lower than Lilac's smallest normal jump. This is mainly used for going down faster or for covering small ledges or gaps. Note that short hopping isn't really necessary for anything in the run outside of minor optimizations, however I still view it as useful enough to mention in this video. To perform a short hop, hold down, then press jump twice in quick succession, finishing with an attack input to perform a dive kick. The inputs are very similar to performing Carol's main movement tech, so if you're used to that you should be good at this. Similarly to Uppercut Dragon Boost, this tech isn't really needed until top level since it's mostly used as a micro optimization. Blink dash cancels are a niche tech that can be used to gain a ton of speed in an instant. Before I go into how to perform these, I want to discuss why they work. Blink dashes can be split up into 3 sections: the startup, the dash, and the ending. The startup isn't really that interesting so we can just skip it. The dash temporarily increases Lilac's speed by 24, and the ending reduces Lilac's speed to what it was before the blink dash. The blink dash cancel cancels the ending, so all you have left is the extra speed. As of right now, there are two known ways to perform a blink dash cancel. The more simple version is an object blink dash cancel. Blink dashing into certain objects will cause the game to cancel the blink dash. A perfect example of this is with rails. If you stand perfectly still next to the start of a rail, then blink dash into the rail, you will go from 0 to top speed instantly. Other objects that cause blink dash cancels include the red redirectors in Globe Opera 1 and 2, the teleporters in Globe Opera 2 and Inverter Dynamo, the spinny things in Phoenix Highway, and the vines in Dragon Valley. The other one is a bit more common but way more complex, being slope blink dash cancels. Why these work is unknown, but how they work is known. If there is a slope that has an angle less than 180 but greater or equal to 90, you can blink dash off of either side for a slope blink dash cancel. Do note that these will only apply vertical speed and do not give any horizontal speed. While on paper these are less useful, they can be used for massive skips, like skipping a large section of Airship Seguada, getting to a usually unreachable spot in Magma Starscape, and skipping the final climbing section of Lightning Tower twice. Fighting bosses is a very important part of the speedrun, considering that there are 36 of them. Because of that, I'm going to explain how to use each move in combat for Lilac. Dragon Boost is a really good combat tool for Lilac, arguably her best combat tool. However, it has its downsides that require some learning to master. Like I mentioned in the move section, Dragon Boost has a couple second cooldown between uses. That means whiffing a Dragon Boost on a boss, or getting a suboptimal Dragon Boost, can result in a massive time loss, especially since almost all bosses in the game run on a cycle. The best way to use Dragon Boost is to follow a boss while they are moving. The actual boost of the Dragon Boost does a ton of damage, so using it as much as possible allows you to get the most out of each boost. Obviously this isn't always possible, so the second best way to use Dragon Boost is instantly cancelling the Dragon Boost after you use it. While this doesn't do nearly as much damage as following the boss, it still does a ton of damage and is way more applicable and easier to do. Throw all your preconceived notions about Cyclone as an attack move out the window, because this move is awesome. On the surface, this move does seem weak, but what they don't tell you is that this move hits 12 times and does the same damage as Dive Kick per hit. Not only that, but this move gives you insane control, allowing you to relatively easily hit all 12 hits. And the hitbox of this move is absolutely massive. Also, this move is really spammable, since there isn't really a cooldown for using it outside the fact you need to touch the ground again to use it. To be honest, you'll probably see significantly faster boss kills if you just use this move more. Dive Kick is a good move. I know a lot of casuals swear by this move in combat, and I know where they're coming from, but to be honest, I think this is a very overrated move in combat. Dive Kick is really useful if the boss has a big, high-up hurt box that can be hard for Cyclone to reach. Examples of this include BFF 2000 and the weather guys from Skybridge. As the hitboxes start to get smaller, this move starts to become harder to use, and whenever the boss is close to the ground, you're honestly just better off using Cyclone. I'm giving Blink Dash its own section because it's just barely useful enough to not be considered a useless move. Simply put, Blink Dash really isn't that good. It does a ton of base damage but requires a ton of setup, where it would typically just be better to use either a Cyclone or Dragon Boost. It's really only useful in situations where the boss is approaching you, and those are few and far between. This section is just about the moves that are essentially useless. These moves are occasionally used, but for the most part you can forget about these moves in combat and still do well. It shouldn't take a genius to tell you Crouch Attack is completely useless. You need to be standing still to perform, and it does the same damage as her normals. There is one instance throughout the entire game where it is useful, and that's during the BFF 2000 fight. However, this only applies to older versions where the dash hitbox was significantly smaller, and even then there are alternative ways to do it. Lilac's normals are probably what most people use in combat, and I hate to say it, they aren't that good. DPS wise, they might be similar to Cyclone, but Cyclone has a way bigger and longer lasting hitbox than normals. I do sometimes use normals when I need to deal slightly extra damage to a boss and can't uppercut or Cyclone, but other than that they're pretty much useless. Speaking of uppercut, that move is also useless. While it does do a significant amount of damage by itself, the fact that it forces you into an animation and can't be spammed makes it really hard to use in combat. I really only use it as a backup to finish a boss, but at that point you could just use a normal or a Cyclone. Uppercut Cyclone is the tech that essentially changed Lilac forever. It is so powerful, it is basically the reason Lilac got split into two categories when it got nerfed. Performing this trick is really easy as well. Just perform a Cyclone by pressing the jump button during the uppercut animation. You might be wondering why this even works in the first place. For some reason, canceling uppercut in the Cyclone this way transfers the attack data of uppercut in the Cyclone, causing each hit of Cyclone to do 3 damage instead of 2. In case you're wondering, there's no other situation in the game where attack data can be transferred like this, so no blink dash Cyclones anytime soon. There is also a variant of this tech that is useful for a ton of bosses that I call the grounded uppercut Cyclone. To perform this, you want to press uppercut but hold down before inputting the Cyclone. This is a bit tricky to pull off, but like a lot of things in this game, it gets consistent the more you do it. Bosses that require this include Serpentine, Core Zone 1 and 2, Escal, and the final 3 phases of Murga. Like Dive Kick for movement, I suggest getting in the habit of using Uppercut Cyclone essentially whenever you can. The only times you don't want to be using this move is whenever you can follow a boss with Dragon Boost, or if the boss has a high up hurt box. In that case, you could just do a Dive Kick like mentioned before. Overall though, you'll notice significantly faster boss kills simply by utilizing this tech more. Now that you know the basics of Lilac's moveset, it's time to actually put it into a speedrun. First, obviously, I recommend you join the Freedom Planet Speedrunning Discord, as there are way more resources there and many different people willing to help. Also, I recommend you download the FP2 Trainer mod by Dazl. While it isn't perfect, it is a really good tool for practicing the game. Lastly, I made a document for tutorials for all the skips currently known as Lilac, and I'll have it linked in the description, as well as a link to the trainer and speedrunning Discord. As for a specific time to aim for, I'd suggest going for a sub 2 hour any % time to start out with. This is the barrier which I believe separates people who are speedrunning more casually compared to people who are more serious about it. That's going to be all for the Lilac Tech Guide. I hope you enjoyed, and I also hope you learned something about Lilac and maybe are interested in speedrunning Lilac in the future. See you later, bye.